So, all right. Well, good morning, everyone. I know we still have some people rolling in, but we do want to be very respectful of time. We are so thrilled as Catalyst Development to be partnering with Driving Pursuits. And so we thought we'd do a real quick introduction of ourselves and who we are and what we do, and then we'll jump into today's topic. So for those of you that I haven't had a chance to meet, I am Katie Irvin. If you see me in formal settings, I'm Dr. Irvin. That's really my husband and kids need to call me that. That's it. But sometimes I'm Dr. Katie when I'm trying to be cutesy, but really I'm just Katie. And I am so fortunate to have started Catalyst Development with these two amazing women. So Emma, do you want to introduce yourself, and then Jenna, and then we'll talk just real quick about Catalyst and then roll in.
Hi, everyone. I'm Emma Blankenship. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer at Catalyst Development. I'm doing all the behind the scenes, all the branding, all the wondering, and the big picture thinking.
Emma is she makes everything pretty for us person. Hints to the pink room she has, guys. I am Jenna. I am the Chief Operations Officer. So I do all things business development, and then I help Katie with all of our facilitation of courses for the most part. Emma joins us every once in a while when she allows us to make her an extrovert for a little while. But Katie and I tag team a lot of things, and excited to help you guys out. Loving Driving Pursuits. Lots of learning curve, but loving it.
Yeah, and I will say, as Catalyst, we are so thrilled being a woman-run, woman-owned business, in the work that Melissa and Gretchen have done with Driving Pursuits. I am a huge golf fan, golf lover. Don't ask me and I'll still tell you, my daughter plays collegiate golf, so I'm super proud of her. And I have watched her over the last 7 or 8 years be really sometimes treated super well on the golf course, sometimes not. And then being the only woman a lot of times in a scramble, I'm like, we need more women to golf. So I have had a secret love affair with Driving Pursuits since it was started. And then when we could find a way to really partner, I was so thrilled to do it. In Catalyst Development, we pride ourselves on, we're not why should you do leadership? If you don't know why you should do leadership at this point, that's a whole different class. We're going to need to do some work. But really what we do is, how do you do leadership? Real intentional leadership skills. So in these 30 minutes or so that we're going to spend with you during these sessions, we really want to give you some takeaways of some of the trainings that we do. We just pulled out some little bite-sized pieces to share with you all. So we will jump right in to today's session, which I'm really excited for. This is probably one of our most popular ones.
Yeah.
Let me
Katie and I talked about this, especially with all of us being women. This is something that we all typically struggle with because we don't want to rock the boat.
Hey, Jenna, real quick, Gretchen. I just wanted to say something, guys. Katie is one of our DPKC mentors. So for those of you out there that are, gosh, how do I start playing golf from a business perspective? I'm going to play my first scramble. I want somebody to go with me that I feel comfortable with, that will help teach me along the way, so I don't feel like a nervous ball of energy. Katie is out there, so reach out if you guys have questions.
Absolutely. Yeah, I will. Even if you're not playing a scramble and you just want to go play on a Sunday afternoon or a Thursday night, let me know. I am not the best golfer in the world, but I sure really enjoy being out on the golf course. So, okay. Well, let's jump right into this topic. And, as Jenna said, this really is such an important topic, especially for us as women. So we always talk about, when we talk about the importance of difficult conversations, how to stop being nice and be kind. We bring it back to Midwest nice. So often we don't want to be considered as not nice, and therefore we're really unkind by not sharing the truth with people. So we're going to talk a little bit about that and give you some tips. But before we do that, we love to do Mentimeters. So if you can, if you're not driving, if you will pull out your phone and you can screen capture here, or I'm also putting it in the chat right now. You can just click on that. We want to know, what is your comfort level with difficult conversations? And as you all are doing that, I will pull up the results. I will have it hiding over here in the,
On one of
so
your
you
seven,
can see. Do what?
on one of your 7 screens.
There are too many screens. Great. So we have some people that are, yep, no problem, do it all the time. Couple do it all the time, but not very well. That's me. I used to be like younger in my career. I'm like, just tell people how I feel, and that'll be good enough. And then I found out, oh, I might be part of the problem. So a lot of people, depends on the person or situation. We're going to talk about that because that's so important. And then avoiding it at all costs. You're not alone. I know you're the one person in this group, but we see it all the time with people avoiding it. So. All right.
The one thing that we find too is typically in the work setting, people actually have an easier time having difficult conversations, especially if you're boss to somebody. But when it gets really difficult is when it's somebody you care about. So if you have to have a difficult conversation with a friend or a spouse or a kid or, anybody that you actually care for.
You, because you're the gymnast.
What was that? Oh, I think that was Katie.
Was having a side conversation. Yeah, which is totally fine. We get it. So, okay, so let's jump into just some quick backgrounds before we give you all some tools. The importance of feedback and kindness in not just in your organization, but in all relationships. This one specifically talks about the workplace, but I mean, we can talk about it in our volunteer work. We can talk about it in our family. No matter where we have communication barriers, it impacts what we do in our relationships. It can impact, how we get things done, our efficiencies. It can make us unclear. We were texting with a friend of Catalyst, and I should have pulled the text over to this presentation. It was so funny because he's a friend of ours. We didn't know if he was married. We were trying to set him up with this woman, and I was texting him like, "Hey, are you married?" And he responded back, "Ha ha." Well, he thought, "Ha ha." We understood that he meant, "No, I've been married for 7 years. Why do you ask?" We thought, "Ha ha," was, "No, who would marry me?" So I'm trying to set him up with this woman, and so that communication barrier became very awkward. Couple months later when we were in public, and I said, "You're wearing a wedding ring," and he was like, "Yeah, I've been married for 7 years." I'm like, okay, we had a completely different text message conversation going on. So even unclear, communication could be very awkward for everybody. Lack of strong leadership, and then the different communication styles definitely can create barriers at work. And really important, whether you're leading a team, whether whether you have a family. We know as women, we're leading the family in our volunteer opportunities. When we're afraid to have difficult conversations, we set ourselves up to be cowardly managers. And so we love this little cartoon of this person. "Why didn't you tell me I wasn't performing well 20 years ago so I could have improved?" And the manager says, "Well, that would be cruel." And that's really a shameless plug, but that's really, my book that I wrote, "You Might Be an Asshole, but It Might Not Be Your Fault." We deem people as unproductive or not good at their job or uninterested or whatever, instead of having difficult conversations. And so being able to clarify expectations, understand what's going on, really build relationships, it allows us to really fully understand what is going on. Jenna, or Emma, can you monitor chat?
Annie just says she likes your book title.
Thank you. Thank you. So it's really important for us to, have these conversations and be willing to be bold. And so we're going to talk about how you do that. The first step is really, I don't know why that is sitting there. The first step is really creating that culture of feedback. We talk about this a lot, creating that growth mindset where we're really open to feedback and we're really open to, learning about good and bad. I love hearing praise. It makes me so happy when someone's like, "You're lovely." I really, really, really celebrate when someone says, "Hey, between you and I, you missed the mark," or "Here's where you could have been better," or "Here's this," because then it allows me to grow and get better. So, Jenna, you want to pop in here?
Yeah, I always like to talk about the nurture the growth mindset part, because growth mindset can be hard for a lot of people. If you have not read Mindsets yet, I highly encourage it because it really gives you an understanding of what it takes to have a growth mindset. And a growth mindset means you fail. Like, I know nobody likes to hear that, but that means that somebody can say something and it be stupid and it's okay. It means that there's creativity and all the things, and you honestly believing that you have the ability to learn a new skill. I always like to use Emma in this instance because after I read the book, I was like, oh God, I hate Emma sometimes. Because Emma, if you don't know, she is an amazing singer and has albums that she's recorded in Nashville. She's like a songbird. We just love her for that. But she will take us to karaoke bars and she's like, "You can sing, Jenna." And I'm like, "No, I can't. I can't sing. That's not my thing." And she's like, "No, you can." And I've always told myself, like, I'm not artistic. That's not one of my big top creative pieces of me, but I could be if I wanted to. And that's a growth mindset. If you believe that you just can't do something because you've never had that skill, that means that's a fixed mindset versus the growth mindset being like, well, if I wanted to learn to draw or sing or whatever, I could spend some time learning it and I could do it because Emma has spent thousands of hours probably working on her voice and practicing and singing. So I just like to touch on that piece.
Yeah. We have growth mindset when we're playing golf and trying to hit that stupid little white ball or pink ball or orange ball. Same, we can. Emma, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I was just going to say another piece of that growth mindset is that when you do get that feedback that's uncomfortable to hear, that someone says you could have done this better or you could have handled this differently, a growth mindset is the person who says, "Oh, yeah, you know what? That's a really good opportunity for me to learn from that." Whereas a fixed mindset would be someone who says, "Oh my gosh, I failed. I'm a terrible employee. I never should have gotten this job. I didn't deserve it to begin with. I'm a failure," So it's how you react to those moments has a lot to do with your mindset.
Yeah. Fixed mindset believes it's who you are. Like young children, I think you guys will identify this. I hear my nephew say like, "Oh, I'm stupid," because he failed a test. And I'm like, "You're 9, sir. You're not stupid. You're still learning." And so the language around it is really important too. Like, somebody can give you feedback and be like, "Oh, that doesn't feel good. I don't like it." It can still not feel good. And you can say, "Okay, I'm still learning. I want more. I want to be better. So I'm going to try to do this differently."
Yeah. Yeah.
I
love
was
that.
just gonna I was just
Go
gonna
ahead,
say that I
Laura.
feel like our initial reaction, or at least mine is like,
Oh yeah.
"Ugh, I don't like that." But then I like sit there for a minute. I'm like, "Okay, all right, yeah, okay." And a lot of times I work with my husband, so that's coming from my husband. So it's hard not to like get really like, "Ugh, all right," but he's right and it's good, but it's hard. So I was just gonna say, I definitely think you have that initial like, "Ugh," but then it's how you react. So anyway.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. And I will say a lot of times like that doesn't feel good. But I appreciate it and I'm gonna work on it. So yeah, it's truly how we receive it that really helps. And truly, that that those people that said it depends on the situation, it depends on the scenario, it depends on the people. That is so true. When we're talking about having difficult conversations, it's about relationships, it's about trust, it's about psychological safety. And so we would be remiss, and we're going to talk about psychological safety a lot as we go through these sessions because it's so important. Psychological safety is really deeply tied to belonging. It's tied to the sense of being safe to make mistakes, to take risks, to share ideas freely. It is really, really important that we're able to show up in our best selves, whether it is at work, whether it's on the golf course, wherever it is. How can we show up and be our authentic, true self? And it's by having that real, true psychological safety. And there's a difference between psychological and safety and trust. And a lot of times people will intermingle it. Now, you can have trust without having psychological safety. You cannot have psychological safety without having trust. Trust is between two people. I trust Emma, Emma trusts me. However, if Emma and I are the cool kids and we don't let Jenna be a part of it, we may have trust at Catalyst. We don't necessarily have psychological safety for Jenna. And if me as the CEO creates a culture where, I am not creating an environment where everyone feels like they can belong and be open and be supportive, then at some point, even though Emma is considered the cool kid in my club, there will be a time where she's thinking in the back of her mind, what does Katie say about me? What is it? Am I safe? How is this? So we really need to create an environment where everyone feels like they belong, that they can speak up, where they can take risks. And I will say, we're going to share these PowerPoint slides with you because the next slide, I think, really gives you some great tips on how to build that psychological safety. As leaders, and whether you're a leader by title or just by influence, it's really important that we show everyone we're engaged and a part of the team, that we understand each other, that we're not blaming to build trust. We see this so much in organizations where we're like, okay, well, I'm going to rally my troops by pitting ourselves against a different department or a different team or even a different organization. And that's where trust can be lost. This is where I always tell the story. There's a woman in my friend group, and I don't necessarily call her a friend, and I've had difficult conversation with her many times, but she is one of those women that will say to you, oh, I'd never say anything bad about you. But then she says something bad about everybody else and all their kids and their kids' friends. And I just don't enjoy being around her because I don't want to know everyone's business and I don't want her to know my business. And so whether it be in the workplace or in our communities, when we're creating that culture of blaming others or sharing other people's secrets, it can really damage safety in an organization. So, Jenna, you want to jump in here?
Yeah, I think on this slide, I really like to highlight the including your teammates in decision making. And in our small team, it's a little bit easier, obviously, but even when we were part of a bigger team, this makes a big difference, especially when you're seeing some who are younger or who don't really know what's happening as a whole. It really helps to give people an understanding of how their part is impacted by the decision and allows them to show you how decisions might impact them. I think one of the biggest things we find is like, especially higher up leaders, people at the lower levels are like, they have no idea what's going on. It's like how we talk about Congress. They're so detached from life, right? They don't know what it's like to really be a true, middle-class American or whatever your class structure you feel like you fit into is like, they don't understand what it's like to be here. And so including teammates in that decision-making helps you to bridge that gap so that they hear your feedback and they feel seen by you.
I just want to highlight self-awareness because from experience, I can tell you that part of the reason why I was able to build psychological safety so quickly with this team is because Katie is very self-aware and she is very honest about her strengths and weaknesses, which made me feel like I can be honest about my strengths and weaknesses, and that it's a safe place for me to say, oh, actually, you know what? I'm not an extrovert. And in a lot of jobs, I have felt like I have to pretend like I am an extrovert because, I'm afraid that that's what's expected of me or whatever. But that idea that Katie was so open from the beginning about her own self-awareness made a huge difference for me.
Awesome. So we are going to fly through. We love Crucial Conversations. And Crucial Conversations, it's a great book. There's great resources out there. And I love Crucial Conversations because you can use the techniques not just in very high stakes, high emotional situations, but I use Crucial Conversations tools in every conversation I have. I will tell you, I used this last week when I was at my daughter's conference championship, where a golf mom and her daughter on my daughter's team were cheering when my daughter missed a putt, because then her daughter beat my daughter on the day one. At the end of it all, they're all teammates, so you should not be rooting for. And so I had to have a very crucial conversation with this mom that I didn't have a strong relationship with, on who she was, how she was showing up, how she was modeling behavior, and how it was impacting my family. So I used these tools just last week, and I will tell you, my husband was sitting there very nervous whether Mama Bear or Katie was going to come out during these conversations. So the model is very basic but kind of complex, because you have your side of the conversation, you have their side of the conversation, what they see, what they hear, all their stories and feelings, and we're going to walk through all of this, and then all of your stories and feelings, and then you have to come together in this pool of shared meaning. So and the girls will jump in as we go, but I'm going to just really tie this to the conversation I had last week with this mom. I really had to struggle with, because step one is start with the heart. And so it really was, what's the point of this conversation I'm going to have with this woman? Do I care? What's the results? If I have this conversation, it goes well, what do I want to happen? If I have this conversation, it doesn't go well, what are the implications of the conversation? So that was really important. And I decided it was a really important conversation because it was going to impact relationships for the next 3 years. Her daughter's a sophomore, mine's a freshman. And so this conversation was critically important. And then the next step was really staying in the dialogue. When I had the conversation with her, I really had to keep the conversation going. I had to make it very non-threatening. I had to really, I'm essentially coming in and telling this woman who doesn't know me, like, I think you're a bad person. And so I had to do it in a very kind way. And so coming into the conversation and saying, look, I know you don't really know me. I own a leadership company, and we do things in the spirit of kind conversations. And therefore I have to have what might be a difficult conversation with you, but is very important to have. And so how we set those up are really important. And then keeping it safe is immediately when I said, I don't know that this happened, and I don't know if this was your intentions. However, it was the perception that you and your daughter were cheering when my daughter four-putted the last hole. And, I just don't know that that's the perception that you all want, is that you guys are mean girls. And immediately the mom, as you can imagine, went into her mama bear mode. And so I had to find ways to make the conversation safe. How can I keep her from getting angry and blaming? And so I kept pulling it back to, I don't believe that was your intention. I believe that there was probably some misconceptions of what happened here. How can we get past these misconceptions? How can I partner with you so this doesn't happen in the future? the way we have those conversations, it works in that setting. It works in the workplace. It works all over. So ladies, do you want to jump in with anything?
So I can't remember, Katie, if I looked at this last night, do we include Brene Brown language in this as tools?
No, but I would love for you to jump in with that.
So girls, I don't know if any of you have read Brene Brown. I'm mildly obsessed. We play a drinking game when I say her name because I love her. And so one of the things that I really took from her book, Braving the Wilderness, was her tool for Rumble conversations. And you can Google Rumble language and the Rumble framework will come up for you. But it's really just a way to use the conversation starters and keep it safe, like Katie was saying. And the short version of her story is her and her husband were at the lake and they were swimming. They've been swimmers, both of them, their whole lives. She was a little self-conscious about what she was wearing because she felt like she'd gained some weight, so in her head, her husband said something and it made her feel like he didn't love her anymore. He wasn't paying attention to her and she said, I love you. And he just kept going. And she was like, what are you doing? Why aren't you paying attention to me? Like I said, I love you. And then it came up and he comes back to her and she said, okay, the story I'm making up in my head is that you're not paying attention to me because you think that I look fat and you're not attracted to me anymore. And you're questioning our whole marriage and you don't love me and all these things. And it's just, we all do this, right? We end up in this spiral of like the worst possible thing. And so when she said that to him, she said, the story I'm making up in my head is. And I think that's a really great piece to help people understand this is how my brain is processing this. And she followed up with, is that what you're saying? Or is that what you meant? And he was like, no, Brene, I'm worried about the boats that are crossing over here because I think that we're going to run over and I wanted you to get out of the way so that we didn't die. And so it was like a whole blown out of proportion thing. And it really just helps to do that. So I highly encourage you to find Rumble language and use it because it's very helpful. It just helps to kind of set the tone away from, oh, you did this and you did that and you did this to, I feel this way. This is my perception. Help me understand you.
Yeah. When we fall into that intentionally or unintentionally, I have a son too, but I just always go back to my daughter. But when we were moving her to college last summer and I was trying to do everything and I was managing everything and I get everything done and my husband's like, he comes in one night, he could see I was stressed and he said, have we done this? And I'm like, yes. Have we done this? Yes. And about third time in, he said, what are you hearing me say? And I said, I'm hearing you doubt that I've got us ready for this move. And he said, no, no, no. What I'm saying is, how can I help you? And, my initial kind of going back to the growth mindset, my initial was like, well, that's not what you said. But then I had to take a deep breath and say, I am so sorry. You were so right. The story I was telling myself is different than your intentions. And that's where, early in our marriage, he could have stomped off and left and been like, okay, she's on one now. But we've learned through our marriage how to really have these difficult conversations. So, and it is important for us to master our own stories. And through mastering our stories, it's really important for us to, state our facts, be able to tell our stories, ask people their stories, and really, really, really listen. That talk tentatively. It's hard for me as an extrovert because I like to talk until I find solution and then I'll talk for another 20 minutes because I love the sound of my own voice. And and so it's really important when you're having a difficult conversation to listen way more than you talk in the conversations. And then the encouraged testing is, how does this feel? How do we come to solution? How do we work together? How can I support you? You're not in this alone. And when someone is not sharing or they're an introvert or, some people, it just takes them longer to process. Even if you set the stage for the difficult conversation, even if you do everything, there may be a point where they don't know what to say. They're processing. And so here's some ways to, really help get their side out. You can ask, what's going on? I'd like to hear your opinion. How were you feeling? confirming feelings by mirroring, suggesting tone of voice, paraphrasing. The other thing too is really paying attention to your body language. We're not going to get into a lot of it here because we have a short time, but we're going to add it into future stuff. Active listening. Are we paying attention? What is our body language telling people? I always tell people, when you ask someone how they're doing and their arms are crossed and they've got a scowl on their face and they're like, I'm fine. It's like, well, you might want to tell your face because that's not what your face and body are telling us. So paying attention to those kind of things too in the conversation. I'll find myself in difficult conversations, sometimes in the middle of it, just taking a deep breath, trying to relax myself because I can feel the tension boiling up. And remembering really, really that everyone is different, how we process things, how we support each other, how we hear things, the stories that we come in with. We do a whole session. Jenna does a beautiful job about, the traumas we come in with, whether they're big T's or little T's. We all have some kind of trauma and stuff that we have dealt with that we bring into difficult conversations. So, Jenna, you want to touch on that?
Yeah. And, even Katie, she talks about common sense not being common, right? The story she tells is really funny, so I'll let you tell it here in a second. But we all don't have the same background. We don't all have the same understanding. Even sometimes the language that we use is different for people. Like, when you're in a group of, this will be a perfect example because a lot of you have children. When you have like a group of high school age boys and a group of high school age girls, and they're probably talking about similar things, but they're actually using completely different words. And you're like, what conversations are happening, right? Like, you don't have the same language there. And so being able to understand that they might actually have the same conversations, and this is part of active listening, but encoding and decoding is really, really hard. So the words that you can use to really ensure that people are understanding your use of language and your authentic self is does that make sense? Are you understanding what I'm saying? And you have to be careful the way that you word that sometimes, because sometimes people will say something and it's like, does that make sense? But it comes off kind of jerk-ish, right? Like, did you get that? And you're like, well, let's not do that. But if you can say to somebody, does that make sense? Do you understand what I'm saying? And honestly, give them a chance to say, no, I don't understand what you're saying. Can you help me understand? Then you can help them to decode properly and make sure you're all on the same message.
Yeah, I love that. And Tracy had a tipsy heart-to-heart with a parent at an event. Sometimes we need a little liquid courage. So I'm with you, Tracy. I found one of our best clients. He loves to do happy hour, and I get the best work from him after one drink. So I love that, where she was able to say, I'm a little intimidated by you, and the woman's like, yeah, absolutely. I have a resting bee face. So I think we can all, either we've been in that person or we've had someone around us. But yeah.
Sorry, Katie. The other thing we can talk about here too, Emma just said resting processing face. And Katie and I are very much extroverts, like we said, but I have friends who are very much internal processors, and my boyfriend is actually a very internal processor, and he will try to be saying something and I have to wait on him. It is the hardest thing ever, you guys. Like, it makes me crazy, but I will literally have to, like, hey, we're talking about something that's kind of hard, and just like trying to dig into some things that might be bothering him or whatever, and I will have to ask a question and then physically say, I'm going to walk away. If you want to come back to this, let me know. I'm going to let you process. And when you're ready, come back to me, because otherwise I'll just sit there and stare at him and be like, talk to me. So that's another tip that's really hard, but will really make a difference in conversation, is letting somebody the time they have to process.
Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. And so the story Jenna alluded to in my house was, I'm sure no one grew up like I did, where the F word is actually a term of endearment, like the big F word. And so in my family, you told people F off all the time. Don't worry, I'm going to counseling. It's a whole thing. But In my husband's family, when you say the F word, it meant something very different. And so we had just started dating. He was teasing me. I told him to F off. And he looked me square in the eyes, as serious as a heart attack, and said, "You do not say that to someone you love." And then he stormed out of my apartment. Now, keep in mind, that was back in the day before cell phones, when we still walked to school, both ways uphill in the snow. And so he like stormed out of my apartment after yelling at me and then went on a business trip. And so he was gone for 4 days. And I was just like, well, it's over. The relationship is literally over, because I told him to F off. And, when he came back, we had a difficult conversation and I had to explain, I do say that word to people I love. So I brought him over to the dark side. He now says it, but, I also find like the way we talk in our house, there's sometimes I will say, talking about my daughter, and I'll say, oh, that bee, look at what she's doing. And people are mortified. And I'm like, no, that's just how we talk. Okay. I won't say that. Sorry. Yeah. So understanding, we're all different. We all come from different backgrounds. So if I don't scroll backwards, going the wrong way. Okay.
Katie, one of the people in the chat added that their team will add a brain to chat whenever they are thinking or need more time to process. And that is brilliant. Kudos to you, Annie. That is really cool, Annie.
That is genius, Annie.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it.
Half of our team is very extroverted and external processors, and half are researchers. And so they're very much internal processors, and we overwhelm them sometimes. And they basically asked for this rule to be made, which I thought was awesome. And now we have started practicing it, which is great because we're all ready to shut up when we need to. It's just great to be told like, hey, I need time and for you to stop talking so I can think about this. And it's worked really well so far.
I love that. And we're going to do more on introverts and extroverts. It's really become a passion of ours. But if you need some fun reading, there's a great book, Living as an Introvert in an Extroverted World. For those of you that are extroverts, you will read it and then you will immediately apologize to every introvert in your life that you've ever bulldozed over or unintentionally stopped inviting them to things because they don't come to happy hour on Friday. You just change your philosophy. Now you just do brunch, bottomless mimosas on Sunday, as opposed to expecting them to show up on Friday when they need that. So, and then the final step to all of this is really moving to action. Okay, we've had this difficult conversation. How are we going to move forward? What does that look like? Obviously in the workplace, and if we're coaching someone, it's going to look different than if it's with this golf mom that I've been working with, or with our family members. But how are we going to follow up? How are we going to support? What are we going to do? Because we don't want to have a difficult conversation and then not do anything with it. And so we really want to make sure that we're paying attention to that. So, it keeps scrolling the wrong way as if this is my very first day ever doing this. So with that, it's time to have those kind of conversations. We need to be brave, stop avoiding it, show people we care, find your words. I will always say to people, I'm having this conversation with you because I care about you. I'm having this conversation with you because our relationship is so important. I really, really want you to be successful, and therefore I need to have this conversation with you. So whatever words work for you, find those and lean into it. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing. Anyone want to jump in? Questions, thoughts? We are here for you. Yeah.
I think that was great. I feel like and I'll share my screen. But I think that was so good. And I think communication is so important. So I really appreciate this. I feel like managing people, it's important. Managing your kids is important, like helping to have those conversations, and they are difficult. And having a team of people really understanding everyone's communication style, or like you said, you love praise. Some people, it finding out what their love language is, I guess, can be very difficult. So I thought this was a very good thing to talk about. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Well, and Laura, you said, even with our kids, I think it's so important with our kids and our spouses and our closest friends. I would rather, say to my kids, like, hey, you didn't handle that well, and you might be an asshole, as opposed to not saying it to them, and then their friend group or my husband's peers or my girlfriend's coworkers, like, has anyone ever told her she's a jerk? And so, when we really lean into telling people the truth, we can really, really, really set them up for success. Yay, Selena. Thanks. Have a great day. All right. Well, we will hang around. We're here for you. We will share the slides with you. We'll stop recording and then we will upload and share the link. So if anyone couldn't attend, they can watch later, but we'll hang around for a little while.
Could you share all the books that you were recommending? That would be super helpful. I like that.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
How many did we recommend? Because there's a long list.
I've got like
typically recommend.
Mindset, Brene Brown, your book, which I found that one already. And there was another one and I can't remember what
Yeah. Social Conversations.
Yeah.
Mindset. Brene Brown.
Oh yeah.
And
Mindset. Brene Brown.
Yeah. Cause I looked Mindset and there's a couple different. So yeah, if you could share them, that'd be great.
Oh, and then Introvert and an Extrovert. Yes, we will share all of that with you all. Yeah. And then if anyone wants my book, I will actually, we'll have our website. You can order them and then I can bring them to Driving Pursuit. So you don't have to wait. So
awesome.
Yay. Thanks everyone. Have a fantastic rest of the week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Katie, this is Lauren real quick, if you have a second.
Yeah, absolutely.
First of all, will you sign a copy of your book for me? Because I want it.
Of course.
Okay, cool. And then I did have a question for you. I thought today's content was really just like empowering, and it gave me some new tools to talk about tough conversations with not only like, people that I'm working with, but my family. I come from a family where, talking about your feelings and having psychologically safe conversations is not the norm. And yeah, this like really hit home for me. So I guess this is a big question, but do you have any tips for dealing with tough conversations where the other party is not interested in psychological safety or making you feel safe? Yeah. I will say I do not come from the healthiest family, and that's why my husband is a godsend with his family. But I've also worked for some bosses that could care less about psychological safety and having this. So I will say, one is, when you have the difficult conversation, you're able to really release. It's like, okay, now that, here's how I'm feeling, or here's what's going on. And so at least you give them now this piece, so you can kind of release that. Like, are they a jerk or do they not know? And so when you have that difficult conversation, I will say for me, both personally and professionally, there's a point where I've had to make the difficult decision of, you know what, I don't fit into this culture. I don't fit into this environment. I can't let this drain me. So I actually left my previous employer because they weren't willing to create a safe environment for anyone. It wasn't just me. It wasn't for anyone. So I had to say, I'm not a fit for the culture. I need to move on. And I will boldly say too, I've done the same thing with my family. My father created an extremely unhealthy environment. And quite frankly, I haven't seen him for 23 years. There's times where it makes me sad because I see other people with their dads and I think, oh, you're so lucky. But then, I have to put it in perspective. I didn't want to lead an unhealthy life where it would be painful and traumatic, and Lord knows where I would be. And so I had to make the decision after going through extreme counseling that, he's dead to me, and that's okay. And so I know that's very deep, but it's true. Just because blood
doesn't mean that you can psychologically damage who I am as an individual.
Yeah, wow. That's a really tough experience. And thank you for sharing that. Like that takes a lot to share. Thank you for this like conversation. You know, I might reach out to you. We could talk a little bit more on a personal level. I just loved this.
Yeah, anytime, Lauren. We love this. This is literally what we do all day, every day. So reach out. I would love to grab coffee or lunch or drinks. And you know, however I can support you and in this journey. We're so fortunate to get to do what we do.
Yeah. Lauren, I will tell you too, there's a dynamic that Katie and I can help you with, because Katie is a more emotional human and I am a not emotional human. So I've just never been that way. And if I do get emotional, you better just leave me alone for a while, because I've turned into a volcano and we don't want to go there. But so there's a hard place right there where sometimes it's not that families or coworkers don't care. It's just that they're not an emotional person. And sometimes it's like, I've had friends that come to me who are like, oh, let me tell you this emotional thing. Oh, let me tell you this emotional thing. Oh, let me tell you this emotional thing. And I'm like, that's too much emotions. I can't do it. Get away from me, please. Stop. I don't want to. Right. And so there's that balance to think about too. So a conversation with Katie might be helpful to distinguish what's stopping the conversation from happening. Is it that they're just not an emotional person, or that they don't care? And then that's a different approach. If they're just not an emotional person, they don't know what to do with it. Sometimes it's just hey, I just want to tell you this because this is how I feel and I want you to understand me better. And typically people are like, hey, I care about you as a human being. I will listen. But approaching it the correct way is a big part of that.
Yeah, I totally need some help on the approach, Jenna. I can relate to that. And like, I think my mom, who's like the person that I have these tough conversations with, is a lot like you, because the most recent conversation I had with her, I tried to approach it with like, you know, this is just me having sadness at the fact that I miss you guys. I'm not, you know, close by and we're growing our families. So the vision that I had for myself is not the reality, right? And so like expressing that sadness to her, the response was like, I hate feelings and I hate when people make me feel feelings, and a lot of anger about that. So yeah, that's on point. She is what you would classify as not an emotional person because she has emotions, but she likes to stuff them.
Yeah. And that's a hard row, right? Like that's a little bit difficult. But you know, the thing that she may want to try to do, like, I know that I'm a fixer, I'm a doer, like literally my working genius is all tenacity and let's do things to fix things. So for her, she probably is always trying to fix something for you. And when she can't fix it, she feels like she's not doing anything for you. And so that's one thing that I've had to learn to ask a couple of my girlfriends is, do you need me to fix it? Or do you want me to listen?
Listen,
And that's a huge change of like, okay, I'm just listening.
Yeah, these are big tips. Thank you both so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, no problem.
I have a quick, here, I'll turn my video on. Hi. I have a quick question. Oh, no, I'm on the wrong video. How do you measure whether or not your team like feels psychological safety at work? Do you guys have a survey, or do you talk to folks about that, or how do you learn about that?
Yeah. There's several ways. You know, you can have the conversation, like you can talk about psychological safety, what is it, and have the conversation. We also have a friend of Catalyst that does some really cool trust assessment that really gets to the heart of psychological safety that we're partnering with him on. So depending on what your budget looks like. So if you don't have a very large budget and you want to do some very basic things, we can support you and give you some tools on that. If you have more of a budget, we can do some of that. But I will say that the step one is really having conversations with your people individually. Here's what psychological safety is. Do you feel like you can speak up? Do you feel like you're included where you should be? You know, and kind of going through all of that. The only concern I usually have with that is well, two things. One, if they don't feel safe, they might not say anything.
Mhm.
And two, if you ask and don't do anything, it's actually more damaging than not asking at all.
Okay, that's good
So,
to know. Yeah, that makes a lot of
yeah.
sense.
Yeah. Sounds weird because people are like, well, we want to assess to see where people are. And it's like, no, it will actually make people more mad if you assess. And then they're like, now you know, now you need to do
You
something.
didn't do something. Mhm, that makes sense.
Katie, how big is your organization?
So there are 8 of us who are full-time, and then there's this like network of contractors that work on different, I have a consulting company. So they work on different projects, and that like difference between the core team and the greater network, because they're only there, a third of the time or less,
Gotcha.
is
Yeah.
just, and so I have good relationships with that core team. And then I think when we bring in others, the dynamics shift.
Yeah. So the one thing that we always see too is how you know a team doesn't have psychological safety is when there's water cooler talk or after meetings, right?
Yes.
Those are telltale signs that you don't have psychological safety. If somebody is whispering about somebody behind somebody's back, like, oh, what did he just say? And usually it's like somebody who's lower in the hierarchy talking about a boss, like, why did they make that stupid decision? They don't
Right.
have it. Right.
Right. Yep.
So that's one thing that I was kind of asking why. But with outside contractors, it's a little more complex.
Yeah, I'm trying to focus on kind of the full-time team and just making sure they are happy and engaged and feel
Yeah.
safe at work. So yeah, that's my
Yeah.
primary focus.
And I will
So-
say there's a difference too. Oh, sorry, Emma. I was gonna say there's a difference too between water cooler talk or kind of, healthy side conversations, like trying to level set and understand. As Jenna said, I'm a very emotional person. And so a lot of times I'm trying to check myself. Here's how I'm feeling before I go and upset someone or do something that's inappropriate. I need to level set myself. So that's kind of a difference too.
Yes, that makes sense.
So
Huh?
I have a quick question. So we just took 4 of our similar offices and merged them, right? So we're all doing the same processes. There's like owners at each location, right? So we went from like 14 employees to now like 50 employees, right? And so we're trying to merge like what we're doing with these other offices and using some of their resources and really everyone trying to work together. And so we have had to be very transparent, is what we thought was like, okay, this is what's happening. And what we found is some people are either very excited about the growth or some people are very nervous about the growth. So I really like, and I'm just trying to figure out how I could tie this in with one of our like sales meetings with our sales team, is like, how do we communicate healthy between each? Because you've got a lot of opinions. You've got a lot of type A's because we're all owners of a business coming together. You've got a lot of like really driven people because we're a growing company. So it's exciting, but it's also a little scary, I think, for some. Like all of us owners are like, this is exciting, this is amazing. But we've got some. And so again, that transparency, I think, has been a good thing. But I'm wondering if it might be something good to have you all talk to the sales team about like how we can communicate I'm a very positive glass half full person, but we have some people in our office that are maybe a more glasses half empty, and that's okay. But I'm thinking like this could be a really good, because we are very new into this growth. So maybe we can
Yeah.
talk sidebar, but I'm thinking maybe down the road it would be a good, like we have usually some speakers, whether it's a carrier, whether it's a whatever, come in and speak on our sales meetings. So I don't know, let me know. But I think that could be maybe something that would be great for our team to look at doing.
Yeah, that's so cool. And I actually taught a leading change class for the Rockhurst EMBA
Okay.
because it goes into psychological safety, it goes into emotions, it goes into fears, it goes into, there's so much that goes into change, even if it's really super positive, exciting change, it also can be very, 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 very scary. And so knowing everyone's different backgrounds and traumas and work experience and things like that. Yeah, let us know. We do this kind of stuff all the time, and we do it kind of lunch and learn kind of things like this all the way to 6-month sessions. So
Yeah.
let us know.
Sounds good. Well, we're all over the place. So we have offices, Kansas, Alabama, Texas, New York. So it would be this type of setting. But I think it would be really great. And we have some of those 1099 type employees as well. So we've got like 300 of those. So it's like, I don't know if we do this more with the internal team and then maybe, but anyways, it got my brain thinking about how we could use this to help that change be a little bit more positive. So I'll touch base with you, but thank you guys. I've got to go on to my next call, but thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thanks everyone. Have a
Thank
great
you.
day.